Hey guys, it's Moo. I've spent way too long trying to think of how to start off this tutorial, so I think I'm just gonna hop right into it. Now, what a surf stab simply is surfing damage and getting a stab. It's really quite simple in the concept. The execution of this concept of a surf stab is a little more tricky, and I'm here to give you some tips and my thoughts about when and when not to go for surf stabs, and what you should be focusing on when you're going for surf stabs. Even if you understand the concepts behind surf stabs, there are some mechanical basics that you need to know in order to pull off these stabs. The bottom line mechanic that allows surf stabs to work is the fact that damage propels you in Team Fortress 2. The more damage you take, the farther you'll fly, and it depends on where the damage is coming from relative to your position. When you're up in the air, you're definitely going to want to have a good handle on your air strafing capabilities. If you don't know how to air strafe, go look up a tutorial. It's pretty simple, but it's hard to get down to the extent that you may need for surf stabs, so I'd recommend practicing that. In these next two clips, take note of where I'm positioned relative to the rocket that I'm surfing. In this clip where I fly really high into the air, I'm syncing my jump with the explosion of the rocket, and I'm as close as I can to it. Plus, I'm directly above the explosion, which sends me really high into the air while maintaining my initial velocity. In this next clip, I fly really low to the ground, and I do that by timing my jump so that the rocket explodes at the peak of my jump, so I'm not getting as much vertical height from the rocket, but I'm positioned at the edge of the explosion so that I get more horizontal momentum that I need to get over the soldier's head. Before we continue, I want to let you guys know that this is all you need to start surf stabbing. The rest of this video is going to be me explaining my thoughts and my planning to surf stabs, which would be highly beneficial, but this is the groundwork that I started on, and it's what I've been exploring the past 7 months. So what I'm going to do is analyze some of my own clips, either an escape or a stab, and tell you my thought process and my planning behind it. Surf escapes are the most beneficial form of surfing to master, and they rely on good game sense, movement, and map knowledge. The reason they are more useful is that there's always a chance to escape with surfing, but there's not always a chance to stab with surfing. This clip shows that you don't need to see the person who's damaging you to surf their damage. I see the soldier shot a rocket at me, and I know the reload speed and the travel time for a rocket to reach me, so I know how to time my jump. In this situation, I'm about to be overwhelmed and I know a lot of damage is coming at me, so I take a jump when I just assume damage will come at me, and it works out in my favor. Sentries are great for surf escapes, especially with the invis watch. This is because you can choose how much damage hits you by when you cloak, and it's not like you're calculating this in your head as you're going for the surf. You just have a general feeling of how much damage you'll take and the distance you'll travel. For surfing any other damage to escape, it just boils down to game sense and knowing when that damage is coming and knowing where you want to surf to. We've made it. We're ready to surf stab. I want to preface this section by telling you that you're going to fail a lot when trying to get this stab down. I mean a lot. And part of it may not even be your fault. Part of it is just players being bad. Or maybe random crits will screw you over. Or maybe a popped crit screen will screw you over. In any sense, surf stabs are very reliant on other players being good, or at least having a sense of how to aim correctly. So this is where the rubber meets the road, or where the spy meets the sky, if you will. The first thing I notice here is the 3 players that are now focused on me, and the very competent looking soldier, who I could definitely pull off a surf stab with. I clear my disguise in preparation for the stab, and I'm aiming for the soldier at first, but he comes up too close. The sniper is too close as well, and I decide to go for the medic. When I see the soldier is shooting at the ground, I know I can get a surf stab, and in tight quarters like these, use the walls and ceilings to your advantage, and bounce off of them to control your movement. With these short surfs, you definitely need to predict where they're going to shoot and time your jump accordingly. Now, at a certain point, it becomes less of prediction and it becomes more of manipulation. Because when you think about it, the way you move manipulates how the other player will react and try to shoot at you. So you can know how they're going to shoot at you before it even happens, and that's how you can predict these things. I want to emphasize learning how to airstrafe really well once again, but not only with A and D, but also with W, as W strafing is very useful when you're surfing right off the side of a rocket, or if you want to do a really short surf. And all of this strafing ties into needing to conserve your momentum until the point at which you stab. Typically you only want to stop your momentum when you're on top of the person or in a place to stab, or where you predict they're gonna go. Like in this clip, I predict the medic to move forward with his soldiers, so I stall myself midair to land on him, but I just have to recover because I missed the stab timing. This is really important, especially when you take a surprise surf. You're just moving around and suddenly you just get launched way into the air. You gotta figure out where your momentum is going and how to use that and turn it around into a stab. And all that comes down to air strafing and predicting where they're gonna be based on your movement. Surfing at really high speeds is especially powerful in terms of your movement because the people have less time to predict you and they have to react more. So you can use that to your advantage by pulling off a simple strafing snapper matador. And I do this by air strafing. I find where my momentum's going and I start my air strafe to correct my movement and do a simple strafe back and forth and get the medic with a strafing snap. Tuning surfs into other stabs is just as powerful as the surf stab itself. It's really just as surprising and just as useful, so don't count that out. Don't think you have to get on top of their head or get behind them. You can turn it into a matador or some sort of backpedal stab depending on the situation. And just remember that speed is your ally with surf stabs. Even if you miss the first stab, you have a high chance of recovery if you're on top of them or around them really fast, because then at that point they have to react to your movement and you can use that and exploit that quite easily if you play it right. But if you're in the air for too long, it just means the other player has more time to react, and you gotta keep that in mind. They're not just gonna run underneath you because you're in the air around them. Typically a player will try to maximize their distance from you, and in this clip the soldier's initially to my right, and even though I strafe above him, he still continues to my right because that's where he's trying to avoid me. So I mispredicted that, and you gotta keep that in mind. We've talked a lot about surfing explosives, so I'm going to take some time to talk about melee surfs, air blast surfs, and bullet surfing. And although you should employ a similar mindset for these types of surfs as with explosives, there are different techniques that you need to know of to greatly increase your chance of success. The first tip is for melee and air blast stabs, and my tip is to use the walls and the ceilings to control your movement and surprise the enemy. It really helps. Trust me. Just take these examples, know the map, and you can use anything to your advantage. To fully utilize the walls, you want to position yourself so that you can bounce off the walls via air strafing. This works because if you did not know already, air strafing with A and D actually builds momentum, and you can just sort of pop off the wall with this tip. If I'm going to be honest, I gotta say that a lot of melee surf stabs don't happen on purpose like this one. A lot of times they're on accident. You're going for a jump stab or something and you get launched into the air because either they predict or you miss your stab. At that point it's just about air strafing and reacting to the situation. Now bullet surfs are definitely the most rare type of surf stab, because they're really just gimmicky. They rely so much on damage spread and someone lining up a perfect shot or tracking you well. Sentries are great for bullet surfs, and using a difference in height is incredibly useful as well. Other than that, it's just your positioning and timing. It's just game sense. Air strafing comes into play a lot as well. One thing to note when going for air blast stabs is that you can only start air strafing after a small period of time after you're air blasted. Typically it's around the peak of your arc, but that's something you gotta keep in mind, otherwise you'll flail around like an idiot. So you gotta wait until you air strafe, and then you can get a stab like that. You can also use it to perform a matador stab from the ground. And the funny thing about surf stabs is that the more you're jumping just randomly, the more surfs you're gonna get. My playstyle, I'm jumping so much, I get into situations where I'm surfing damage and I don't even realize or plan for it. But at that point, it's just about reacting. Air strafing, knowing where you want to go, picking your target, and being able to execute the stab in that way is vital to even getting any sort of success with surfing. And with that, I'm going to end the tutorial here. I think I've said enough. I think you guys have enough tools to go out and practice this and maybe get some surf stabs of your own. So best of luck to you.